Hey everybody, it's Doug here, Doug Mr. Guy, Board Game Geek, bringing you the final video in my top 10 cooperative and solo playable games of 2016 for me. Maybe not always for you, but for me definitely these are the ones that fit into the category of my top 10. And you know, in the previous lists I got some interesting feedback. Some people were disappointed Time Stories were so high and everything. You know what? That's awesome that you don't like Time Stories as much as I do. That's the way it should be. Games are subjective as far as our opinions of them, and that's more than fine. You know, I'm perfectly fine with someone saying, I hate Time Stories. I don't know what you saw in Time Stories, Doug. But the reality of it is, I saw a lot in Time Stories. I saw fantastic artwork. I saw a cool, unique mechanic set that you may or may not like. It seems like that particular game seemed to have very opposing perspectives from people. And they either loved it or hated it. Well, I was one of the ones that fell in the camp of loving it, because you got to keep in mind, so a lot of you don't know my personal background in the game industry, but I've done things in the game industry, like written RPGs, etc. I have probably, I don't know, worked in 20 plus RPG books back in the early 2000s, etc. And I'm a writer. I've written some stories. I got some things published there as well. And so I have this perspective of storytelling that I really enjoy, and Time Stories filled that niche. So that's just one example. I do not think that all of you are going to agree with my list 100%. And that's perfectly okay. In fact, I love hearing about what you think is different. And interestingly enough, it's one thing, what I like to hear, sorry, it's bothering me, my OCD getting me a little bit. The only thing that bothers me about it is if you're going to share something like that, share the why of it. It's really interesting. I just think it sucks. Why do you think it sucks? Why do you think it's great? Why do you think I should have ranked some games much higher? I can't remember which ones were. There's a number of them I got comments and emails saying, why didn't you rank that higher? I understand. Well, because this is my list, and I have a particular set of things that I like. And some of you agree, and we're not going to ever have the exact same list. We wouldn't be individuals if that was the case. And we have our own free thought on this and what we're going to do. I can tell you right now, one of my up-and-coming future games is sitting on my table. I'm trying to unpack it, and that's Gloomhaven. I just got it in the mail, and it is a massive box. I'm so excited about this game. I can't begin to tell you. I got some boxes to put the tokens, all the monster tokens and everything, because there's so many tokens. I was like, ooh, how do I store this? I got to think about this. The way the box is laid out, the miniatures and the characters and everything, and the way it unfolds is just so cool. Can't wait. Anyway, but that's enough about that one. That's not on my list because I haven't played it yet, but I'm about to. Okay, so let's get on to the actual list, my top 10. You know, when I look at this top 10 list, I really think of all the enjoyment I've had in the last number of years doing this, and I realized I've been doing these videos for a few years now. I didn't even realize it. Very cool. I'm enjoying it immensely. And God, you know, I wish that I have a pretty big job, and I don't know if I could ever do this full time because I don't think I can replace the income and all that, but I sure would love to. That'd be really fun. However, that's not reality. But we get to go on and talk about my top 10 cooperative games, solo games of 2016. Now, keep in mind also that when I talk about these things, there can't couple of my rules, and you're going to think a couple times you thought I broke them, but I pointed out, hey, no, there's actually not a dedicated trader mechanic. There's a trader mechanic, but you can take it out, and that's going to be true in my top 10 as well. Also, you know, if it was a one versus many, it is not in my list, and that's really important because one versus many things games aren't cooperative, and they're certainly not that easy to solo. You can solo them, but then, you know, it's like someone said about some strategies I was using. You're not using the best strategies, and I said, yeah, you're right. I'm playing against myself. Why do I just want to have fun, you know, and I want you guys to have fun watching it. And so sometimes I make choices to advance the fun factor and the storytelling as opposed to my strategic awareness. And so, you know, things like that. But let's get on to my top 10. And we're going to start with number 10. Now, number 10 actually has two games, but I'm really talking about the first one. There's the main game and a sequel. And it does have a possible traitor mechanic to it. And one of the things I love, I got to tell you, one of the things I absolutely love about this game is that you don't know. You know, like so Battlestar Galactica, you know at the midpoint of the game, someone is going to be the bad guy, is going to be the traitor. There's absolutely no doubt. In this game, you don't know. And what makes it even cooler is we all have in the game our own personal agendas. And with those personal agendas, it might seem like I might have an agenda that makes me appear to be a traitor because I don't want to contribute in a way that seems logical to keeping things going. And people start, oh, I think they might be a traitor. And in fact, there may be no traitor. And that's one of the coolest parts about it. And you can remove the traitor mechanic as well. And I don't like to play without the traitor possibility because it lends some tension to the game while it's still a very cooperative game. And that is Dead of Winter by Plaid Hat Games. By far, probably the most unique zombie game to come out at its time. Because it kind of reminds me of the show, The Walking Dead, where the zombies really are a backdrop to what's happening there, not the focus of what's happening. And in Dead of Winter, you play, each player has a kind of little faction set of characters that could be the town mayor or the town drunk, a school teacher, or just that are in this bunker or whatever it is, warehouse bunker or something, that they're trying to survive and go out in the dead of winter to these locations to pick up supplies and try and do things. They meet people, they have storylines. It had the crossroads mechanic is one of the more unique mechanics that have came out. And I didn't say that it came out in 2016. I don't remember if it was 2015 or not, but in 2016 it's one of the games I've played a lot. And it came out with a sequel, and I honestly haven't played the sequel yet. I have it sitting there, just haven't played it. It introduces some new things, but we keep playing the original one because it's so good. In that you are trying to contribute to this community thing, and you have your own personal agenda. So there's all these crises that come up, and the crisis might be, we got to contribute this amount of food to, or this amount, let's say this amount of gasoline or fuel to the encampment to keep it around because it's going to be a harsh winter or something like that. And you might see one of the players and that you think they have fuel. They went and scavenged the gas station, but they're not contributing any fuel, so they must be a traitor. But maybe not. Because what it might be true is they might have, their hidden agenda might have something to do with keeping some fuel for themselves, having nothing to do with being a traitor. They still want to contribute. They still want the colony to survive. They want it to thrive. But they have to do it in their own terms because their agenda says, for you to win, aside from the cooperative portion of that, for you to win, you have to complete this as well as keep the community alive. Love it, those mechanics. Now, technically, that shouldn't fall in this list, but because you can take out the traitor mechanic, and because of the unique nature of it, I think it still fits. You can play it solo, without a doubt. There's some variant rules for that, and it's certainly cooperative most of the time. And one of the things I absolutely love about it is the crossroad cards. So what keeps the flow of the game going, it's really neat, is you have this big giant stack of crossroad cards to tell a story. And when it's my turn, the person on one side of me is going to pick a card and watch it. And if I do something that triggers what's going to happen on the card, they go, oh, okay. And they read the card and things happen. And sometimes more often than not, there's a moral decision to be made. And that's a big deal of the game. And those moral dilemmas can affect the whole outcome of the colony, and again, drive some people to think, is this person on our side or not? Really cool. Artwork's great in it, all the different character standees. I'm not a huge fan of standees, which is interesting in Gloomhaven, because Gloomhaven sitting in front of me has a lot of standees too. I like miniatures better, but the standees fit the game because they're all in color and they all show these different characters that are in your encampment, that can be in your encampment, that you can recruit. You can find survivors out in the world. The biggest bane, and again, I wouldn't call it unique, it's a die, but the way it's used is unique. Whenever you venture out, you have to roll this die. It's a 12-sided die, and some sides are blank, some sides have you get wounded, and sometimes some sides have you get a frostbite wound, and the frostbite wounds can fester and become bad. And then there's this one symbol on the die, this big tooth. It means in your travels, whatever you did to roll that die, you were bitten, And now you have to make this horrible decision. Do you wander off into the night, slit your own throat, take your life before you spread this plague? Or do you take a chance and see if you survive it? And if you do take that chance, you roll a die. And if you roll any symbol again, it's not blank, then it starts to affect the whole colony. And so, again, that adds a really interesting mechanic, and you have to weigh out the good and the bad and make these decisions. Really awesome game. And I like the fact that you actually have more than one character to play in your little group, and they all have different abilities and do different things. And it just really, it really gives you this cool social dynamic amongst the people that are playing. And that's Dead of Winter, by far one of the most interesting games I played when it came out, and I still love it today. I'll put it on the table anytime. It comes out fairly often in our game group. It's one of the more popular games for sure. And while it does have some elements that make it a little less co-op-y, I think those are the things that make it unique as a co-op type, at least semi-cooperative game, and worthy of being on this list. So that's Dead of Winter, and one of my favorite games. And again, the other one is, hold on, it's on my shelf somewhere. I'm looking for it. Dead of Winter, The Long Night. That's what it's called, The Long Night. And that's the expansion. Again, I haven't played it. It introduces bandits and some other mechanics to it that are really cool, but I just haven't gotten to it yet. I've so much going on. Lots happening on my game table here. I'm going to try and, by the way, while I'm going to take a break to go to number 9 and tell you that my Black Orchestra game got totally kiboshed here that I had on the table. And I'll show you why when you see it, but my board got so warped, thanks Game Salute, so warped that it looks like an accordion, and I'm going to have to go flatten it out. But I couldn't even move the pieces without sliding. Well, I'll show you just a moment. This is my board. Okay, I mean that's ridiculous, right? I mean, come on, guys. I had a hard time even folding it. It didn't even want to fold. It's so jacked up. Anyway, that is my board for Black Orchestra. Fantastic game, Black Orchestra. You know, the game itself, mechanically speaking, is in my top 50. And what I'm going to do, so because everybody was enjoying the playthrough, I was too, but I literally couldn't play it anymore. The board was so bad, and I have to go press it and get it back to normal if I can. It's pretty badly warped. But what I'm going to do is probably take that to Tabletopia. Anyway, sorry for the break. I'm talking about number 10, Dead of Winter. Just wanted to show you what happened there, because I wanted to tell you that my playthrough of Black Orchestra is all but stopped. But we're going to go on to number 9. Number 9, Dead of Winter. Get it, play it, fun game. Number 9 is a game that my kids loved. And it's not that simple. It's mechanically simple, but it's not that simple of a game. And the design and development of it is so rock solid. And it doesn't even come from a game publisher. That's the cool part about it. And if you know this game, you're probably starting to get an idea of what I'm talking about. Like Robo Rally and some other games, it has these pre-planned mechanics. You have to plan, but it's not competitive. It is cooperative. It is 100% cooperative. And it has the best production values of a game I think I've seen, maybe ever, without spending hundreds of dollars on some deluxe edition. It was like $80 or something. And it's a game that what you would say could be hundreds of dollars charged. You know, it's amazing, amazing production. Pre-painted figures and everything like that. That is Mechs versus Minions. I can tell you right now, guys, it is scenario driven, but you go back and play the scenarios again, they're still fun. It is so fun. It's got a legacy mechanic where the campaign grows out as you go, and you have these envelopes that you unseal. It tells you when and how to unseal them to get to the next mission. And you have this mech that you're using these cards to program, and it does what happens on the programming every turn. And there's some ability to manipulate that programming each round so you can accomplish what you need to accomplish, and pre-planning is really important. And I found the game very, almost educational for my children. And what we had a game day at my house. A friend of mine, his son, and myself and my 2 sons were all playing games, and we played Mechs versus Minions. Now there was 5 of us, and it's only a 4-player game, but my older boy and his boy teamed up, got on a team, and we played. And we played the first scenario, and everybody was so excited we played another one, and then another one, and then another one, and another one, and we kept going. We didn't finish yet, but we played a whole bunch in one day, and then we took a break and need to get back to it. But even for me and my friend that played, it was fun. It was so fun. It was fun for me. In fact, I'm thinking about stuffing everything back in there when we finish and go play it with some other folks too, because it's really worth it. Basically, you're trying to defend a school, or there's a storyline where you start out defending the school where your mechs are trained from, and I believe this is from the League of Legends game. I don't play League of Legends, so I'm not sure, but I think that's where it came from. And the guys that made the game are actually the producers of the video game, not board games. They first board game ever. And not only did they price point it well, I'm sure they made money because they sold like 30,000 of them. It was ridiculous. I'm sure, and the production values, man, I mean, they pulled out all the stops, and I guess because they had the money to do that, and that's fantastic. But if you can get a copy of this game, do so. It is fun, and I know you can watch some videos, and it's great to play. And I was thinking about putting it on my table. I haven't done it yet. There's been some other videos on it, and there's spoilers when you play it, so it's kind of hard to get to the table without spoiling it. But man, what a fun game! Both my boys really have talked about it over and over again. And I mean, really, you just have these swarms of minions coming in, and your mechs are marching around the table doing buzzsaws across the table and flaming, like flamethrowers going off and everything like that. And sometimes you just go the wrong way, and it's funny. You go the wrong way and attack nothing, and that's something to laugh at and enjoy because you programmed it poorly or whatever the case may be. So, it's just absolutely enjoyable game. So, again, if you can get it, I don't know. I think they're going to do another print run, and I'm sure there's some on eBay, but they're probably kind of expensive because really, I've never seen production values on a game at that price point for that. Like I said, if it was some kind of crazy deluxe edition, it was $200, I would get the production values on that game. But it wasn't, and that's what makes it even cooler. Is they spent? I mean, there's even a plastic insert that is so awesome. They took into consideration that even though there's different miniatures, you can put it in any slot and it fits the same way. It fit. I mean, everything down to the details. And there's this big giant box in there that's sealed. I've already opened it, but I'm not going to tell you what's in it because we played far enough to open it. And all you see on the outside of that box is this axe thing sticking out. You're going, what is this? I'm not going to spoil it for you. It's very cool. Very cool. And it really made the game a lot more enjoyable when we open these things up. Like Pandemic Legacy, but simplified so it's not as complicated or as long as Pandemic Legacy, and that made it good for both us and the kids because we could play it more quickly. Anyway, that is Mechs vs. Minions. That is number 9 on my top 10. Highly, highly recommend it. Not only were the production values good, and I want to stress this, the game is good. It's a good game. It is fun. It is fast. It has enough thought process in it, and the mechanics are so clean. I mean, you can get right in, and the way the rules are written, maybe you pop that first scenario out, it's like a tutorial, and it takes you through it, but it was still fun. And then it introduces over the first couple of scenarios, it introduces all the rules in a way that is just so organic. You barely need to pick up the actual rule book. I don't remember if there is an act. I think it just steps you through it, and that's a brilliant way to teach a game that's lengthy and big like that. Mechs vs. Minions. Can't recommend it highly enough. In my top 10. Play it, play it, play it. Fun stuff. Okay, now, number 8. Number 8 I've been collecting for years, I think now. Kickstarted every Kickstarter that they've had on it. I've gotten all the extras, bonus cards, bonuses, everything you could put with it. And I play it on the iPad all the time. I just love the game. Now, a lot of people think that this game is mathy. And it is. You have to do math. And if you use an app or something, there's an app that allows you, not just the app of the game, because there's an app for the whole game. You can play the whole game now, I think, except for the latest expansion and the one that isn't out yet. The latest expansion is out and the one that's not out. On the app itself, or there's an app also that manages your game. So there's 2 different apps. One is just to manage the actual board game play that you're going to play, and the other one is to play the game as an app. Phenomenal game. I have it on Steam. I got it on my iPad. I have it in real life. I have it physical copy all the way through. We've played it so many times because it's so versatile and so easy to bust out. I do know a couple people who don't like it, and that's people who tend to be newer to gaming or don't like doing math, and because you do have to do math and you do have to do a lot of ifs, ands, this, and but still, I enjoy it because it's a puzzle to me. And when you sit around with 4 people and you pick something out, it feels so unique each time. There's so many variables to it. That is Sentinels of the Multiverse. Superhero card game where each of your heroes has a set deck of cards, and I think it's about 30 or so, and is completely unique, or mostly unique, in its mechanics. And there's tons of heroes in it now. In addition to that, you're fighting against a villain or set of villains if you have the villains of the multiverse expansion, where you're, or sorry, no, Vengeance. Vengeance introduces, I believe, the multiple villains that you can play. So I play my hero turn, then a villain turn, hero turn, villain turn. There's multiple villains you can, so you can fight a group of villains. But normally you fight one in most of the rest of the games. There's been a lot of expansions. You fight one villain. And some of the villains are tougher, and they're rated. You can see how they're ranked in difficulty level, and you can ratchet up by playing them in an advanced mode. And you see you've got your group of heroes. Each person plays a hero. It's completely cooperative. Each person plays a hero. The villain is driven by his deck, and the things that the villain does is all surrounding his deck. And it could be a series of villains that branch out from one deck, or it could be one villain with lots of minions. Could be heck, one of the villains is the secretary of the Freedom 5 at the Freedom 5 Tower, and she's called Misinformation. Awesome villain. I love that villain. And there's just tons and tons of heroes and villains in the game. And the way the things are designed, the rules are fairly simple. You know, you play a power. You play a power. You play a card. You play a card, play a power, draw a card, end your turn. Something close enough. Anyway, I played it so many times I can't even remember the order. But the cool thing about it is, and then you move on to the villain turn, I think, and then you move on to a location, and that location could be like there's the Wagner Mars base, for example, or there's Atlantis. There's the Block, which is this space prison. There's a time and space one too that's really neat. And some of the villains are like that, like El Capitan, she's a time-traveling pirate. There's heroes like this time-traveling cowboy, or there's a guy that's like Iron Man. He's called Bunker. The first set of heroes they're kind of spin-offs of other characters that you see in other. They're not exactly the same, but Bunker's like Iron Man. He's this armored-up dude. And then you have a speedster and a super strong and someone who's like the Punisher, and all these different characters. And it's just really good. And every character that you play, you really need to play all the different characters multiple times, because you got to get used to how they play. They all play so different. Like Legacy, one of the main characters, he's kind of, while he does fight and he's good at it, he's strong and everything like that, one of his main things is to buff other characters. And if you don't know how to do that can be challenging if you never played him before. He is one of the easier ones to play. But then you got Absolute Zero, who is difficult, very difficult to play. And he does things like damage himself with fire to convert that to ice, and vice versa, and do lots of damage. He's really neat character. And then you have some spellcasting characters, and the mechanics are different. Like you have one spellcaster who's got these little spell symbols on the numbers on the card that create the value of the spell or the power of the spell. So there's this chaos piece portion to it. Really cool. I mean, so many different things. I'm having a hard time. There's so many different variables. I'm having a hard time articulating to you the variance that's in the game. But typically you're playing 4 or 5 people. Each person has their own hero with their own deck and unique set of powers, cards, and abilities that they're fighting against an enemy and a location, in a location that's all very different. It could be a city, it could be a sewer. It has all kinds of crazy stuff going on. There are some villains that are incredibly difficult to beat. Trying to remember the name of the villain off the top of my head. She's got crows. Can't remember. She's so hard to beat. Can't stand her. And the chairman, who's got his bodyguard. That's very, very tough villain. And then some of them are straightforward. You just got to do a big battle, really, and you don't have to be too unique with it. But Sentinels and the Multiverse has had many expansions. And before, if you want to experience Sentinels in the Multiverse, but don't want to go out and buy $300 worth of boxes, which I don't know if that's what the value is, but it's been over time for me, so I can't tell. You could just go get the app for, I want to say it's like, I don't know, the base game is like $6 to $8, and then you can get each expansion for $10 or whatever, and play it that way and learn it that way before you get a box and bring it to the table. It's probably going to be on my list for forever because the replay value. And there's another expansion I kickstarted that's still coming. It's the last one, but there's still a lot of variable to it. Now they did a board game version of it that I wasn't into. I didn't get into it at all. And considering how much I like Sentinels and Multiverse, I'm surprised because it had all the same characters in it. But very different feel as a tactical miniatures board game. I just didn't dig it. I have better tactical miniature board games. Some of them are even superhero ones. I couldn't tell you, I mean, as far as superhero games, Sentinels and Multiverse, for me, as a board game, is by far the best of them that I've played. And so much so that it's the only one that's actually on the list for me, is Sentinels. So I'm going to tell you, I have everything like the foil cards. I mean, you don't need that. If you just have the base game and get a couple of the expansions, you are set. I'm kind of a completionist, and it's my hobby, so I have a ton of stuff. But Sentinels and Multiverse is a must-buy, but try it first, because if you don't like the mathy aspect of it, because you have to calculate things to make them happen, and you got to calculate how much damage you're going to do, and you can kind of pre-plan a plot, and these cards have all different effects, and you got to get very used to the heroes you're playing. You know, it's just it can be tough for people. I've had I think I've had 2 or 3 people that play say, I just don't like this. Everybody else has loved it. I mean, absolutely loved it enough where they've gone out and gotten it themselves in most cases, or own a copy of it, have owned a copy of it. And it's one of those things very easy to sit down and say, hey, let's play Sentinels. And everybody, yeah, okay, let's do that. That's how much people typically like it. So that is number 8, Sentinels of the Multiverse, the card game, card-driven board game. Can't recommend it highly enough. It is mathy. If you're adverse to that, it is a problem. You can see I have played Sentinels on my channel before. I use the app to track the game, not the app that is the game, but the app that tracks the card version of the game. Works very well. I think it's called yeah. Anyway, you can look up the app Sentinels and Multiverse. You'll see both apps there. Get the game on the iPad or Android or Steam if you want to check it out. Highly recommend it. You'll enjoy it. Okay, now I could go on and on about Sentinels. I could talk about all the different characters and do some comparisons and that, but we'll save that for another time. I'm just going to tell you it's in my top 10 at number 8, and that's what you need to know about it. So I've explained how it plays and the simplicity of the mechanics. All the mechanics are in the cards, which makes it really neat. Because you don't need to have a big. I mean, the rulebook's thin, and you don't need a ton of rules. You just need to. I'm going to play a card. I'm going to use a power. I'm going to draw a card. I'm going to let the villain take his. The villain's going to take his turn. The location's going to take his turn, and then we're going to move back. So and then circle player to player, player to player. Really good stuff. And again, get it. Fun. If you don't like the math, I'm sorry. All right, now we're going to go on to number 7. Now, number 7 was my tricky one. It's the one that I said there was another tie. My tie's at number 7. Okay, so and the reason I did that is there's a game that because it really is one of the most accessible, most well-known cooperative games. And I'm going to tell you something interesting. Like Forbidden Island and Forbidden Desert aren't in my top 50 because, and I think it's just because they're played out for me. And so if I'd done this video 2 years ago, those would have been in my top 20, maybe even 3 years ago. But there's so many other games that I'm playing so much more regularly that I did not include them in my 2016 list. They're in my top 100, and I highly recommend them. They're fun. Those ones are really accessible, fun games. That's again. Well, anyway, the reason I bring those up is because the designer of that is also one of the designers of one of the other ones that's tied for my top 7, and you're probably getting to figure out what it is. He also did another one that's kind of similar, based on the TV show. Where is it? I can't find it. I'm blanking out, and I hate it when I do that. But anyway, so same designer for Forbidden Island. What's the puppet? We're totally spacing out on it, and I love it. It's a fun game. Totally spaced that on you guys. You know what? I'm going to pause because I want to tell you what that game is. Hold on. Okay. It's Thunderbirds. I don't know why I was spacing on that. Thunderbirds board game that was kickstarted last year by Matt Leacock. And he's also the designer of my tie for top 7, Pandemic. Just generic Pandemic. I can put that on any table with anybody, gamer or not gamer, teach them their first cooperative game or one they've all played before, and everybody enjoys Pandemic 90% of the time. Now I've had, again, like all games, I've had a couple people go, I don't really like this, but Pandemic, I don't know how much, if you're in the board game industry and you don't know what Pandemic is, you either new to it or I don't know, or you're living under a rock or something. Pandemic's one of the cornerstones of board gaming, and definitely for cooperative gaming. And basically you are people trying to fight the spread of these 4 viruses, these 4 terrible viruses that have been unleashed on the world. And your role, you might be a researcher, or you might be a paramedic, or you might be a logistics person or something that's trying to help do this. Now this spawned one of my other ones that's on my top 50, which is Pandemic Legacy, which is the same thing as Pandemic, and it starts out very it's like almost starts out Pandemic a little light, and then it gets to be Pandemic, and then it continues on to be the Pandemic Legacy, where the story grows and grows and grows. But Pandemic itself is just something you can pull out and play, and everybody likes it. It's fun. It's not really that difficult. It's not horribly long, and it fills the niche and itch of wanting to get into play a cooperative game, especially with people who don't play cooperative games. That is one of the keys to Pandemic, and why it's number 7 on my list, is accessibility. Is it now one of the best games? Probably not. I think there's been better mechanics driven in cooperative games, but the simplicity of it. For example, I have Pandemic Rise of Cthulhu. It's actually a little mechanically simpler than Pandemic even, but really fun. And I could have put that on my list, but I got Pandemic on my anyway, and Pandemic Legacy on my list. So do I include yet another Pandemic version game? But that just shows you that, I guess, Pandemic Iberia just came out. There's been lots of expansions for Pandemic. I have most of them in my Pandemic box. It's just a really fun cooperative game. And then you got Fantasy Pandemic, which is Defenders of the Realm. I'm sure people hate when that gets called Fantasy Pandemic, but that's at its root what it is. They took the Pandemic, or I should say Richard Lanius took some of the Pandemic concept mechanics, turned it into a fantastic fantasy game. But again, none of those would have occurred if Pandemic didn't occur. And when I think of games that are accessible, that I bring to the table for people that don't play games that are not party games. So, like, if I'm going to go bring out a party game, it's going to be Cards Against Humanity or Telestrations. Those two are by far, or even more enjoyable, combined Telestrations with Cards Against Humanity. That's funny. Anyway, those make people laugh. But cooperative games, I want to get down and teach people to play a game, and I say, some people don't like to play. They're worried about playing competitive games with someone like myself who plays games all the time. So I bring a cooperative one like Pandemic out. Everybody's happy. So Pandemic, probably, definitely tied for my number 7. I don't need to talk. I hope I don't need to talk that much about Pandemic. So I'm going to stop there, because if you don't know what it is, go look it up. Everybody knows what it is. It's a good game. Okay, my tie. And the reason I had it as a tie is because really this was my number 7 choice, and then I started thinking, Pandemic deserves to be on my list. Even though I don't play it as much as I used to. I still do play it. I still pull it out for people that are not gamers and that. But the one I had originally picked for my number 7 was Robinson Crusoe by Portal Games, Adventures on the Cursed Island. It's a Euro game. It's a cooperative game, and it's a good storytelling game all in one, and Ignacy Shavacek design it. I love Robinson Crusoe. Crazily enough, I traded my first edition in, but I'm going to pick up the second edition. I knew that was coming, so I didn't mind trading my first edition out. But now I'm kind of jonesing to play it. I don't have the second edition yet. And again, I traded it for something that's in my top 10 that I haven't talked about yet. But Robinson Crusoe, where you were playing a chef or a carpenter or something that's stranded on an island, Robinson Crusoe style, and you start with this little encampment, and you have to explore this island, and it's got these great mechanics where you can take a risk and roll some dice and see what the outcomes mean. Maybe you get injured, maybe you have an event occur, and the events go into an event deck. It just creates all this storyline, something that you might cut yourself and have to put it in a deck and put this little marker on your character card, only to come find out later that got infected when that card comes up again. It tells this great story, and you have to complete a scenario. Like in the first one, you have to build a big giant bonfire. and you need enough wood to build a bonfire big enough for ships to see as you pass by. And you have so much time to do that in before, in that case. And every scenario has a different timing mechanic, like why is it timed differently. But you can also then, you have these 2 pawns, and it only is, even though you're representing one person, you have 2 pawns that you can split your time with. Now, if you double up your time, you don't have to take the chances and roll the dice. In most cases, there are some events, cards, etc., that make you roll anyway, and then you might as well take the chance. And if you're playing with fewer characters, you can play with a dog and Friday from Robinson Crusoe that can come help you out. There's also a morale mechanic that's really neat, that allows you to spend these tokens on your special abilities that you have. There's also a civilization building type component where you're building things like rope and a spear and an oven, shelter, barricades for your shelter, a roof on over your head, places to store food so they don't spoil, all these different little things that you can build that help you along the way. Some of them are required for the scenario, some of them just help you get along. It can be really hard. It's another one of those games where I don't mind losing because I had so much fun losing it. It makes it worthwhile. And it's clearly one of the best cooperative games, number 7 on my list, best cooperative games I've played. I can't wait to get my hands on the 2nd edition because there are some refinements, mainly in the components and that make it interesting. It can be a little fiddly because there's a lot that can happen in the game, and if you have someone that's never played it before, there's a bit of a learning curve. But if anybody's played it before, you could sit down, set it up, play it, boom, and as long as one person is reasonably familiar with it, they can have everybody up and running in about 2 turns successfully. I mean, truly understanding the game. That is Robinson Crusoe, Adventures on the Cursed Island. Portal games. I have a lot of good Portal games. I know 51st State's behind me. I also like many other of their games. Portal games, good stuff, right? So that again is my 2 number 7s, Pandemic and Robinson Crusoe, my number 7s. Now I'm going to guess that some of you are probably going, yeah, okay, I'm starting to get your top 10. It makes sense. There's some really good games in there. So I'm going to move on to number 6. Number 6. Man, I remember when the 1st edition came out. I liked it, but it was so complicated for me. I was like, oh my god, I can never do this on a channel once I figured it out. 2nd edition came out, got better. 3rd edition came out, got phenomenal. Okay, so what I'm really talking about when I say number 6, I'm talking about the 3rd edition of this game. It comes from one of my favorite publishers. It is not one of the mainstream publishers, for sure, but are starting to put out more and more mainstream games. It has a theme that I like, zombies, and the way that the 3rd edition is done is unbelievably phenomenal, and that is Dawn of the Zeds. Dawn of the Zeds is a cooperative game at its root. It can be played one versus many. It can be played solo very easily, and it's actually designed with the ability to play solo with no problem. And in it, you're trying to defend the town of Farmingdale, I think that's the name of it. And you have these characters that get to take actions and do things, and in the meantime, you have these tracks like the highway track, and then the suburban track, and then there's underground track and everything. And zombies appear on this and march along, and they're tougher. And there's a big cup of zombies, and some of them are weak, some of them are tough. And the game ratchets up as you go along. You have these deck of events that make the game harder and harder as you go, and the events are unique and they do something different. And each of the cards has many different components to the event, and it's incredibly well laid out and designed. And it's by Victory Point Games. One of the things I love about Dawn of the Zeds is the way it's, especially the 3rd edition, is the way it's designed. You can play several levels of difficulty, starting from the base game, which really, God, anybody can sit down and play it, all the way up to a very complex but satisfying. When I say complex, I'm talking about strategically, very complex game at the higher levels, where it ratchets up not only difficulty, but the rules and things, all the different things you can do. It adds more as you go. And there's lots of playthroughs in this, but so you can play the vanilla, the very basic one, and it's fun, and you'll enjoy it. And you go, yeah, I want to add these things. So you play the next one. Yeah, I want to add more. Excuse me. Tired. I want to add more. I want to add, now I want to add the ability to research a super weapon. Now I want to add the, the other components. Sorry guys, I'm yawning. I'm tired tonight. It's a work night and I just want to get this video done. So I apologize for my tiredness. But anyway, Dawn of the Zeds. The third edition has a real board and everything. So the old Victory Point games usually had mats and everything. And I remember playing some of the original ones like Zulu's on the Rampart. I'm trying to remember another fantasy one that I really loved. And they were in baggies. And it felt really old school. Felt almost old school Steve Jackson-ish, you know, like a little baggy game like Ogre or HEV and Car Wars and stuff like that. And so their games were like that, but they were really good games. And I think their slogan is the game's a thing or something like that. Very true. Dawn of the Zeds now, though, is in a big box. It's it's got so many components, so many things, different things you can add on. Very difficult at the higher, especially at the higher settings, game settings. And very easy to lose. I tend to lose often because you have to get all the way through the event deck to the point where the National Guard or whatever's coming to save the day and blah, blah, blah. But the way that plays out over the turns and the things that can happen tell a great story, and that's one of the coolest things about it is you evolve this story with these guys, these characters that you're engaged with that you did. Like I might have now, if I'm playing solo, I'm playing all the characters. It's got a really good system of tracking their actions, and I might have 2 actions, and then the event card will give me generic actions that anybody can use, and we can decide if we're playing cooperatively. We can decide who's going to use those actions and why. We have sometimes civilian units that are special, like it might be the radio station guys or a group of mercenaries, or you know the local sporting goods people that went crazy on us and took up arms against the zombies. So special civilians that you can play those actions on, and also real civilians and refugees that are trying to get back to the city to survive. Chaos spreads, disease spreads, super zombies can come through. It's really good. And you add, and again, the coolest part is you add those things on as you go. So if you're playing the basic one, you're not going to have all that stuff, but if you're playing the most advanced one, you're going to have everything in the kitchen sink, and you're going to know it because it's going to be hard. And fun at the same time. You have more advanced characters, more advanced things going on. There's an evil doctor that's plotting against you. It's just really neat stuff. That is Dawn of the Zeds, my number 6 game of 2016 cooperative solo games. Okay, now my number 5. You're probably gonna go, man, Doug, I thought that'd be like number 2 or number 1, but it's my number 5. And why? Because some other games have started to take its place. It's an older game. It's from one of my favorite publishers, and I have more than one of their games in my list. I have at least 2. No, I'm going to have 3 games in there from them in my list. And that is going to be, now I did a series on this on my channel that was really well received because I did a narrative with it where I was recapping like previously on, and it worked out really well, and I told the story from the perspective of a character in the series. And this game allows for that to happen. Now, some people worry that this game, especially with the expansions, can be kind of long. It's what I call a Scooby-Doo game, where you're trying to solve a mystery of some kind. And that is A Touch of Evil. A Touch of Evil by Flying Frog Productions. This was A Touch of Evil is one of the catalysts to one of my all-time favorite games, and we'll get there. But A Touch of Evil, you're playing. It's like a colonial American town that's beset by some type of horror, and there's actually, if you have all the 3 big expansions, it actually expands out to a coastal town as well. And you are going to be taking on some terrible villains. You have to discover their lair and defeat them. Like most Flying Frog games of that nature, it's got multiple elements how you can play it. Now, for that, you can play it competitively, you can play it semi-cooperatively and cooperatively, and I got to tell you, I don't think we play it anything but cooperatively anymore. It's just, that's the funnest way to play it by far. And in it, you're going to be playing a character. It could be a colonial soldier, it could be a witch, there's one that's like a half vampire or something anyway. And you're trying to discover the mysteries surrounding a villain. And that villain could be the Headless Horseman, could be a Banshee, it could be this Cthulhuoid type creature, and the cult, the same cult that's in Fortune and Glory, which I'm trying to remember, the Hand or something, Crimson Hand, or it could be any number of things. Scarecrow, an evil scarecrow, And each one has its own set of rules and minions that do different things in the game, which makes the game very unique. Plus, you're playing each character. And one of the things I love about A Touch of Evil is you have these decks of cards for each location on the board. And when you go visit those locations and explore them, all kinds of things, a la Arkham Horror, all kinds of things can happen. And you could go to the old windmill where you fight somebody and get an item, or you could just stumble upon a corpse and find some things, or you could just go there and have some beset by hauntings and madness, and it's just all kinds of different things, and it's really unique. You go to the inn where the innkeeper helps let you stay for the night for free, or a peddler comes and says, "Hey, I got this stuff," or you get accosted by an evil cult while you're sleeping at the inn, things like that. Go to the monastery, pick up some monastery items. Learn something about the monks. Maybe they teach you some things. Maybe they teach you give you some information on the villain. And then you have these location cards, and eventually you want to be able to buy one of those, get enough investigation, and this track goes down, the darkness track goes down. When it gets to a certain point, the ability to locate the villain as the villain becomes more powerful becomes easier. The villain might be hiding under the bridge or in a cave or something like that. And you have to defeat that villain in an epic showdown, which if you lose the showdown, you don't necessarily even lose the game. You can come back and try again, but it gets more difficult. Another unique mechanic about A Touch of Evil is that you have these elders in the town, and the elders have secrets. And you can discover those secrets as you go, because you're going to need to recruit those elders to help you against the villain. And sometimes if you haven't figured out their secrets, sometimes they could be in league with the villain. Sometimes they might be cowards and not fight for you, or sometimes they might be a secret hero that's already been helping your plot and you didn't even know it. There's all these different things that can happen from that, and you can discover some of the secrets as you go, so you get to mitigate, how good the allies are that you're going to take with you on a showdown against the villain from the village, from the town. And again, you're going to collect gear and you're going to get more powerful, so you can take that villain on. And the villains are pretty darn tough, especially if you play them with all the advanced modes, and that's what I do anyway. But the villains are tough, and some of them are easier than others, and there's some that are really difficult. And there's a lot of luck, a lot of dice rolling. You roll a die to move, you roll a die to accomplish things, you roll tons of dice in a fight. It's a dice chucking craziness. But I love it because it evolves a story, gets you really invested in your character and your world there. It's got very sound mechanics, even though again it can be kind of lengthy especially because of the randomness of it. I've had games go hours and some games go just 2 hours. But I am okay with the length of that game because the game is so fun. That's my number 5, A Touch of Evil. So my number 4 is very similar to number 5 in a lot of respects. And again, it's been expanded up the you-know-what as well. And it's from Fantasy Flight Games. Now, you see I have several games from Fantasy Flight on my list too, because they really do it right with cooperative games. And it really kind of started with this one, for the cooperative stuff. And that's when Fantasy Flight gained the rights to do this game, Arkham Horror, by the way. It allowed for them to really enhance the game product and have all these spin-offs that have been created, and I mentioned him in my game, in my series here, but thinking, I'm totally blanking out tonight. Like Elder Sign, what am I thinking? Eldritch Horror, blah blah blah. All these Mansions of Madness, they all spun off from Arkham Horror, which definitely means that Arkham Horror is going to be in the top of my list, right? And it's number 4, and it deserves to be number 4. It's one of my all-time favorites. And kind of like A Touch of Evil, you're playing against an old one. It could be Cthulhu, it could be Azathoth, it could be Nyarlathotep, or any one of the other elder ones. And you are investigating the town of Arkham, or Dunwich, or there's lots of things. You could be looking into the yellow sign of which is a whole different thing with this play, and it's very, it's H.P. Lovecraft, so it's very weird and cool. And there's so many expansions and add-ons to it. If you want to see great playthroughs, I'm trying to remember all the guys that I'm going to name off some folks. Tragic the Blathering he does great ones. Ricky Royal, Catweasel, they do really good playthroughs of Arkham Horror. I don't do it much on my channel because so many people do playthroughs of Arkham Horror. so I kind of avoid it on my channel, but I play it, and I do love it. Also, I tend to have a love-hate relationship with it on video, and I have the same problem with Elgitor, where I just seem to make mistakes. I don't know why. I make a lot of mistakes with those games. And I don't seem to make those mistakes when I'm just playing solo or playing with friends or whatever. But when I'm filming, I tend to do that. Kind of weird. But Arkham Horror, again, you're traveling around the town. You're trying to close gates that are to these other worlds before the world gets consumed, and summons this great old one to destroy everything, and you lose the game. Again, you're playing individual characters. It's the same characters you're going to encounter in Mansions of Madness, in Eldritch Horror, in Elder Sign. They're all the same groups of characters, and so it gives you this. Oh, now the new Arkham Horror card game, same thing. You're going to be playing some of the same characters there, and it really gives you this sense of an expanded universe and different characters coming in these different settings to do things. It makes it really, really cool. Again, it's like a 1920s, 1930s setting for Arkham Horror, which I like, because one of the things that, I mean, today, if you got stuck in a town, you just find a good cell tower and make sure you make a call. Or, satellite GPS. It's a little harder now than it was, it would have been in the 20s. You had to kind of solve it on your own. Mansions of Madness takes place in the same time frame. Trying to think of some other games like it. But anyway, it's a Cthulhu game. Check. Cooperative game. Check. Can be played very well solo. Check. Not very accessible. But it's accessible if someone can teach it. And it's long. It's a long game. I mean, especially if you start adding a bunch of expansions into it. The reason I'm doing that is because it's on the shelf across from me. You can see that and some of the expansions that I have there. And again, if you want to see some playthroughs of it, I highly recommend it. There was a young lady, I can't remember what country she was in. I think it was Sweden or something. She was a programmer. She did a really good version. I can't find it anymore. When I changed computers, I lost it. Of Arkham Horror that you could play online solo. It was fantastic. Now I do think you can if you're on Tabletopia or Tabletop Simulator on the PC, you can also find, not Tabletopia, but definitely Tabletop Simulator, find Arkham Horror there and look at it and tinker with it and learn to play it, whatever. But it's one of those games where on the board it looks so cool. You got these monsters that are coming out of a bag that are attacking you, and different events that happen. You go to a curiosity shop and they have some cool artifact, or you go to the old witch's house, or you go to the Silver Twilight Lodge and some of the members give you a special item or help you in some way or not. You can end up in jail. You can end up with a retainer to work for the newspaper. All kinds of crazy stuff. All the while you're trying to defeat this evil that's being brought to the town and uncover the mystery around it. So it spawned several games like Mansions of Madness, Eldritch Horror, Arkham Horror the card game, and Elder Sign, and it spawned all those games. So Arkham Horror #4, one of the best games in existence of its kind, which is a cooperative Scooby-Doo game where you're trying to defeat this great Cthulhu evil. Okay, the next one is, I've had it on my table a bunch of times, and when I got the opportunity to get and play on my channel the beta version of the third edition of this game, I couldn't pass it up. It is so unique and so well done, so well designed as a game, cooperative game, that I just love it. The only drawback in the previous versions is you always had to have 4 characters that you're playing in the game, and since then that's changed a little bit. There's a solo mode and a 2 to 3 player mode that you can play now. In the third edition beta, I only played the 4-player version, and that's my favorite way to play it, but it's nice to have the ability to not play it that way. That is Darkest Night. In the deluxe expanded third edition, now you can go back and get the second edition and get all this stuff with it. There's several expansions for it. You have a character, and the character has basically the world. The cool thing about Darkest Night is you're in a fantasy world where you lost. The hero's lost. The necromancer, the evil necromancer, is now taken over. There's this one bastion of hope. There's this sanctuary in the form of like a convent temple type place, and you're trying to keep it from being destroyed. While at the same time trying to defeat the necromancer who's already won. So the world is totally set against you. This is another game that you will lose, and you will lose it frequently. until you really learn how to play it well, learn a lot of the different characters. And the third edition, there's got to be 25 different characters. I think, maybe 20. There's a lot. But you have your character card. Now the character card in itself, the only thing it shows you is how much life you have, which is called grace. And in that basically it's you die and then grace brings you back to life. And the grace of the gods only happens so many times. And then you have secrecy, because you need to sneak around and keep out of the necromancer's keep off the necromancer's radar. And he might sense that there's somebody in the village or somebody at the castle. He might go there and try and get you, but he won't know you're there. So he's going to drop these things called blights. And blights are terrible things that affect the world. And if they become too many, they start to go to the monastery. And if the monastery gets so many, the game's over. And each character has a unique set of ability cards. And I think in the base game it was 10, but I think it's up to 12 or something in the third edition. They added some more to each of the characters. And so you might have a ranger or a crusader or an acolyte of the necromancer who's gone good and wields dark powers. And you get at first you only get to pick a couple. You have a couple of powers you can use. One of my favorite characters is the druid. He's got a wolf. One of my favorite original characters, anyway. And he's really good at. He can summon a wolf. He's good. He can turn into hide in the forest really well. All that good stuff. And again, kind of like Sentinels in the multiverse in this sense, each one of these characters plays completely different. And the tactics you're going to use with the monk are going to be completely different than the tactics you use with the rogue, for example. The rogue's sneaky, great for going around searching for things. You also have like a scout that can help other characters get to locations faster, and just multiple stuff. And the turns are unbelievably simple for a game that has a lot of strategic complexity. Basically, on your turn, you move or you encounter the space. So you do something at the space. So if I'm going to go destroy a blight, my first turn I'm just going to move there and then have to deal with the blight, the consequences of the blight that's there. And then on my next turn I can attack and destroy the blight that's there. I might get a quest, and I can move to a space and start taking on a quest. And the quests have a timer on them so they can expire, and when they expire, bad things happen. And the board is simple too. There's the monastery, then there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 other locations that you can visit. And when I first saw this game, I thought, it's not going to have a lot of diversity to it. But it does, especially when you add the quests cards in the new third edition, the darkness cards for the necromancer that enhance his abilities. Instead of just having, he drops more blights as he gets nastier, as he gets more in line with the fact that you're trying to take him down. And some of the blights are creatures. Some of them are skeletons or a lich or zombies or something like that, and you have to defeat them too. And the quests do everything. There was one quest where you had to save children from this, in the village, and if you failed it, you took a big morale hit and things happen. And there's other ones where, like for instance, there was this mass open grave or something like that, and if you didn't get there and bury the people in time, then skeletons appeared and undead appeared there. Things like that, and it's all the mechanics around are driven on. Even though it is a board game, it's not just a card game. Man, guys, I'm tired tonight. Sorry about that. You can move from location to location, and each of the quests that you have are all card driven. There's these beautiful, especially in the third edition. You can go back and watch my playthrough on this. Beautiful cards that tell you what happens. Locations, like when the necromancer takes his turn, he moves to a location, he drops a blight there. You draw one of the same cards as you would if you went and collected a treasure there, searched and succeeded at searching. What you're trying to do, if you're playing with everything in the kitchen sink, and I highly recommend it if you get the third edition, play with everything in the kitchen sink, you're going to be looking for clues to fuel these mysteries. And the mysteries are going to build up, and when you get to a certain amount, it tells you where to find a relic. Relics are the only, 90% of the time, the only way you can kill the necromancer. There are some abilities that allow you to do that, because imagine you're rolling a 6-sided dice. To kill the necromancer, you have to roll a 7. Well, you can't. So you have to find ways to do that. If you have a relic, you get +1 to your roll, so you can roll a 7. There are some rare abilities of the characters. I think the Acolyte has one, for example, that allow you to just do that with the power you have. And even though they're not that easy to use, you could then go kill the necromancer. But if you're rolling 1 die and you got to roll a 7, well, that's pretty rough, because that means you have to roll a natural 6 in most cases. So, And the biggest problem is the relics are like glowing beacons of the god that's trying to trying to help you defeat the necromancer. So when you have a relic, you start losing your secrecy rapidly, and the necromancer targets you and comes after you. Again, I'm rambling on about this game because it really is, as a tactical game, true board game, cooperative board game, it is really my favorite. I'm just going to say it, but there's a reason there's two other ahead of it, because I'm also a role player and I love role playing. You'll get to that. We'll get to that. Darkest Night. Second edition's fantastic. Third edition's going to be even better when it finally gets out from the Kickstarter. And I ordered the version that has the miniatures. I hope I didn't make a mistake with that, because the standees are really nice. It's one of the few games I actually like the standees on really well. And mechanically very sound. Like, it's so simple. Like I said, you know, on my turn, if I'm in a monastery, I'm just going to move to a new location or take an action in the monastery. If I'm out of the monastery, I'm going to draw an event where I'm at and then take my action. And the events are wildly crazy. Some of them are just bad. And there is some luck, because you are rolling dice and everything, but there's a lot of mitigation in the ability to roll the dice. So, like, for instance, if I'm fighting something, and I'm going to have a power that's going to, I might need a 5 to defeat it. But I'm going to have a power that's going to allow me to roll 4 dice. And then maybe I won't be able to use that power again for a little while, but I've done it. Or I'm going to have something that allows me to flip a die, or I'm going to have something that allows me, if I do fail, to re-roll or escape or something like that. There's all kinds of unique abilities. And again, each one of the characters is very, very unique. Very unique. And that makes it fun, because every time you sit down and play, you can play somebody that's a completely different character. It makes for a different gaming experience for you in trying to defeat this evil necromancer. And now with the addition of darkness cards and mysteries and quests, every game feels radically different. Which brings me to the one, I guess the only downside I could say, is the luck factor can go against you. I win the game reasonably often, but I also lose it a lot. And most times when I'm losing it, it's not because of a bad strategic decision, it's because of bad luck. And that's okay, because that's a point of the game, and you know it when you're playing it. There's a luck factor. So that is Darkest Night, number 3. I only got 2 more to go, guys. What do you think? What do you think's number 2? Well, so number 2 is what I traded a lot of my other top 50 games for that I traded away. Robinson Crusoe, for example, Zombicide, Black Plague, and blanking out the other one in my top 50. That's how tired I am tonight. I'm blanking out on the game. Galaxy Defenders. Got rid of all those for this one big, very expensive, very hard to get game. And I'm not going to mention the guy's name that traded it with me, because I don't know if he'd want me to or not. But I really appreciate the trade, because when I got it, it was still in shrink. I got a bunch of expansions still in shrink. And well, I do believe we made an equitable trade. He got a lot of stuff. I got a lot of stuff. This game was so rare and hard to find. I was just thankful that someone got it to me so I could put it on the table. And I've been running a great series. I ran season 1. I'm calling it season 1 of this series. And that is one of the most unique games of the year, by far, Kingdom Death Monster. So, Kingdom Death Monster, very, very fiddly, complicated, non-gamer game. Accessibility's out the window, but the gameplay and experience is so unique and so cool that it's worth it. What do you do in Kingdom Death Monster? Well, it's a combination of a monster hunter and civilization builder. Yeah, that's what I said. In the role-playing game, board game. Even better, right? Because I love role-playing games. I've designed role-playing games. I've had award-nominated settings back in the era of Dungeons and Dragons, the D20 system. Wrote a bunch of stuff for that. Wrote some Dragonstar modules on behalf of. I didn't publish them with Fantasy Flight, but for Fantasy Flight Games years ago. Did all kinds of stuff. So I really have role-playing in my roots. I ran D&D games for years. And when I realized life took over and I had big jobs and couldn't role play on a consistent basis, that's when I kind of turned to board gaming, because I found that the hobby satisfied the same feel for me. And when they started putting out games that felt like role playing games, I was ecstatic, because Kingdom Death Monster is one of those. So in Kingdom Death Monster, you're thrust into this very strange, macabre world where I still don't know, because I haven't completed the game. I still don't know if you actually are dead or not, but you're a survivor that wakes up in a loincloth with ink on your face in a world that is pitch black except for a lantern that you have, and you're in a world that's completely covered in a sea of stone faces. That's how you start. and you wake up with a number of other survivors that get brutally attacked by a white, crazy-looking white lion that has almost human-like claws. And the uniqueness of this game is you're going to do this tactical battle against a creature. First, you're going to hunt the creature. Well, in the prologue, you just wake up to a horrible fight where you have to claw sharp stones out of the ground and kill this thing, this terrible lion. And then you realize you can continue to hunt white lions and gain resources. But you're playing the survivor in this world, and the mortality rate is very high because what you're really playing is not the survivors, but the settlement. The place that these survivors build up to call home, and their generations of people. So you're going to hunt a creature down for resources. You're going to fight this terrible creature. You're going to bring the resources back to your settlement, and you're going to build up the settlement. And there's this huge book that tells stories, and there's so many variables to this game. The storytelling is off the chart on how good it is and how clever and different it is. And the expansions just add to that. And some people say, well, it seems repetitive. You fight a white lion 3 or 4. You're going to fight the white lions multiple times for resources. But the way the game is structured, each fight is going to be so different. Your characters have evolved. They gain more stuff, more interesting abilities, more interesting items. But more so, the monsters themselves. There's multiple levels to the monsters. But even if you just fight a level 1 white lion 4 times, it's going to be a different experience. Because you're going to make up a deck of artificial intelligence cards that are going to guide the lion's movements. Now, the lion has habits or tendencies that are the same. It likes to charge and grapple people and take them off and run with them and maul them. So there's some similarities. And like one of the next monsters has this ability to run around and he eats these plants that heal him back up and everything like that. So the monsters are very different. But the AI deck and how that monster reacts and in what order they do things is going to be very different each time you play. And your tactics and strategies are going to have to change as a result, depending on the monster you're fighting and the AI deck that you start to unfold. The AI deck also represents the wounds of the monster. So as you damage the monster, it gets less and less options on what it can do. When you damage the monster, you're going to use this hit location deck, which is also a big, giant deck of cards. And the hit locations are going to cause the monster to do even more things. So each of your fights, your tactical fights, even if you're fighting the same monster, is going to be radically different. And that is very cool. But that's where the fun starts with this game. Because then you're going to go back to your settlement. And there's going to be a story event. And you're going to track this event. And then you're going to get to innovate in your settlement. You're going to get to discover things like language, how to build houses, how to, you have to make moral decisions. When you first have children, do you whoop them by the sword, a la, like, AKA the Spartans, or do you treat them with care and guide them into kindness and high level of mental aptitudes or whatever? You can make those choices, and they have a profound effect on the whole future of your settlement. You could have your settlement get destroyed. It's very possible. And one thing I'll tell you is you cannot get attached. You're going to fall in love with the characters you're developing. For example, my first game, my first session, I had a main guy, Logan. Awesome. Named after Wolverine. He had big, long brown hair, and he was tough, and he was killing things. And man, did he get jacked up to the point where I couldn't even bring him out on a fight anymore. He had crazy injuries. His hand and arm was all mutilated. He couldn't do anything. He was crazy as a loon because insanity is a big deal in the game. And insanity actually is an interesting mechanic in this game because you think sanity is important. Well, insanity is important in this game because the more insane you are, the more you can cope with this crazy world you're in. And it actually defends you. Insanity is actually your mental defense against crazy crap that's happening. So it's a weird but very cool and interesting mechanic. So you have this tactical thing, then you go into the settlement phase, and during that phase you're going to start to build locations. Like you might build a skinnery where you take the skins of the animals and you can turn them into weapons and armor and etc. And that gets more unique as you go too. You could get to the point where you're building specialty masks and all these other different things. And so each time you have these fights, you return to your settlement, and events happen. Strangers could show up to kill you or help you. You're going to draw an event card each turn. I had this one that kept coming up over and over again in my last playthrough of this crazy dentist that would come and say, I'll turn your jaw into metal. I'll help replace your teeth if you lost your teeth and can't eat anymore. Eat solid foods anymore because you got them bashed out by the lion or the antelope or something like that. And there's all this crazy stuff that happens. And there's one event that is murder, and so one of your settlement people killed another one, and you have to deal with the consequences of that. And it evolves and grows and grows and grows, and your settlement gets more powerful. These events come, your settlement gives you more back, and the more you can build, and you get these innovations that basically are technology discovery. So there's that element of it that is really unique. And then after you've done your settlement phase, you go, well, man, we can't starve, and we need more stuff, so we got to go out and hunt something again. And there's things, as the story progresses, you're going to be able to hunt tougher and tougher, stranger things. Like, there's a phoenix. You think, okay, a phoenix. I'm going to hunt a phoenix. This is not a normal phoenix. This is some time-warping, crazy-ass creature that has a face in its beak and hands coming out its rear end. And I mean, I'm not joking. Even in the miniature, hands are coming out of its rear end. That's just true. And it has hands all over its wings, too. And you can go... I have the miniature on my playthrough if you want to go watch that. But such a unique experience. And then you can pack it up in a certain way that saves your progress, basically. And you have character sheets and a settlement sheet that you keep track of. You could put it away for 2 months and come back and pick up right where you left off. Or you could put it away and have another settlement running with a different group of people and have a completely different experience with that settlement. It won't be entirely different, but it'll be different enough where you'll still enjoy it. And again, you'll fall in love with characters. They'll die. Or crazy things will happen. Maybe one of your favorite characters is a female, and you decide to have babies. And there's a weird time thing with these lantern years where I don't know how much actual time passes in a lantern year, but the baby you have in that lantern year can actually become an adult that year and go hunting with you even. And there seems to be a weird agelessness thing about the world itself. Except with the Phoenix can actually make you just become out of existence by gaining too much experience. Really interesting mechanic. But and so there's all these things and stories. You could write a book on it. I mean, literally, it's just phenomenal. And the expansions enhance that. There's some expansions that enhance the entire campaign. So your campaign of settlement is going to be completely different if you have the Lion God, for example, or as opposed to, or the Dragon King is another one, as opposed to just doing the vanilla campaign. And I wouldn't call it vanilla. There's nothing vanilla about this game. It is very adult. There's nudity. There's a lot of sex. Not sex, intimacy. Because you're having babies, you're doing all kinds of things. It's a very unique game. One of the most unique game experiences I've ever had in a board game. Not for the weak at heart, and not for, if you're going to fall in love with your character, don't play it. Because your character is going to go crazy. It's going to get maimed or mutilated. I have one character that all that I do with that character now is leave them in the camp to be a fertile myrtle for babies, because she got so jacked up. She doesn't do any. She can't do anything in a fight anymore, hardly at all. And she was one of the best fighters too. She's like Logan. Sarah and Logan were my two best, and I had to transplant them. And their children, a couple of their children, have died especially when I had the fight with the Phoenix. I lost all but 2 of the characters. Anyway, that is Kingdom Death Monster. By far one of the most unique experiences. It was recently re-kickstarted with a 1.5 edition. If you didn't get it, guys, I'm just telling you, it's going to be really hard to get. If you can get it secondhand, great. If you can't, don't buy. I mean, it's so expensive. People are overcharging for it in a tremendous way because they can. And the miniatures are all cool, and you have to, I mean, by the way, I didn't even talk about that. You got tons of miniature parts. So you can put together, like if you get the full lion armor, you can have that. If you have partial lion armor and partial leather armor, you can do that. You can make a character that looks like that. You can mix and match these figures and then paint them to have the coolest set, really, one of the coolest sets of miniatures you will ever see. Just cool. Because they're so unique and individual to the game you played. And like, for instance, I have one miniature that I made. It's a woman. She's in full hide outfit armor, but she's carrying a bow, a catgut bow from the cat. And I actually have the miniature of her in the full hide armor carrying the catgut bow. It makes it really cool to use that miniature with that character. And you think, oh my god, but what if that character dies? Well, generally speaking, you're going to pass that gear on to the next character. So you can use the same model again. It's fine. Anyway, guys, that is Kingdom Death Monster. Number 2. That's why I spent so much time on it. Do you know what number 1 is? Bet you do if you follow my games. So number 1 is a Kickstarter. Some people spend a boatload of money on the Kickstarter. And it started with 2 main big boxes. And it is expanded out there. In fact, the big second wave, I think, is the end of the second wave. So I even actually financed the 1.5 wave, and the big second wave's coming. And it's another one that is a role-playing game in a box with another very unique setting. Not as unique a setting as Kingdom Death Monster, but also plays very different. Because it's more of a tactical game where you're doing scenarios. And the theme, man, as soon as I saw this, I was like, oh, Flying Frog, you've really done a cool theme here. And that game, my #1 co-op solo game. You might disagree with me. Don't I care. But this is still my favorite. Shadows of Brimstone. It's totally unbalanced in some ways. It's a dice chucker. A lot of luck. A lot of stuff going on. Tons of cards. Tons of dice. Tons of everything. The theme will capture you. The characters will capture you. They're so fun to play. It is Cthulhu or Other Worlds meets Old West. The boxes, the Swamp of Death and City Agents, have a Cthulhu-esque feel to them. They really do. There's these tentacles that come out a lot. And what you're doing is you're playing these Old West guys. It's an alternate Earth history. This stuff called Darkstone fell on a meteorite on the Earth and stuff like that. And it gave people the ability to open up portals to other worlds. But and the Darkstone is very powerful. It can fuel weapons. It can do all kinds of things. It also mutates the heck out of the people that are holding on to it. And it's in the Old West, so you're playing things like a saloon girl, or a little orphan kid, or a drifter, or the local sheriff, the marshal, an Indian scout, the typical tropes you'd see in an Old West game. But you're going into these mines to either solve a problem, a mystery, like maybe recover monsters came to the town and took one of the local townspeople's kids or something, and you're going to go help find them, or you're just going in to be greedy and try and collect Darkstones so you can go back and make some money in kind of mercenary fashion. And the cool thing is you go into these mines, the artwork's beautiful on the tiles, and the tiles form a mine as you go along, and you're playing these characters, and so mechanically it's a lot like a Touch of Evil. You roll your dice to move, except it's more tactical. You roll your dice to move, you can do your attacks on monsters, and you continue on. You explore these different rooms. I love using the advanced rules. I highly recommend using the advanced rules on the mines and that, because when you draw a new location, you go find the card for that location to make that location unique and does something different. Don't play it a different way. It's too cool not to play it that way. Like if I come to the elevator shaft, and there's the big mining elevator, it does something different if I pull that card instead of randomly pull a card. That's the way to play it, guys. I'm just telling you. You might disagree with me, but that's the way to play it. And it has had massive amounts of expansions. Like I say, 2 big giant base game boxes in the City Age and Swamps of Death, and I'm looking at some other things. You can see Shadows of Brimstone, Other Worlds, Tradera Deluxe expansion right there. I also have the Caverns of Cinder Deluxe expansion and the Frontier Town expansion. And a lot of the Kickstarter stuff that came in the 1.5, which is extra characters and monsters and stuff that can appear. Items, tons and tons of items. And again, like Kingdom Death Monster, you play this tactical game where your characters are running through this, either, in this case, either in the mines or now in a town setting where you can fight bandits and outlaws and stuff like that. And go to these unique towns. You might go to a riverboat town or something, but in between adventures, you're going to town and you're doing town stuff. It's very role-playing. Like I'm going to go back to town, I'm going to spend some time in the saloon gambling, and then I'm going to do this. And the longer you spend in town, the more likely they are to have events happen. And if you're in the mines and things get out of control by this track movement that you have, darkness track goes up and the depth track goes down. So the deeper you go, the more challenging things are. But there's also this rising darkness that if it gets to the top of the mine, then monsters escape and go to your town that you're going to go back to and destroy crap. And it's bad. Bad for your characters. So the characters level up. That's another important aspect of it. So you're gaining experience, and one of the most gratifying things about this game. So and it's same in Kingdom Death Monster, and wasn't so true for things like I mentioned the Pathfinder deck builder game. You level up, but it feels so slow. It doesn't feel like you're leveling up with any substantial ability or anything. Not true of Shadows of Brimstone. When you level up in Shadows of Brimstone, your gunslinger, it's super cool because you get new abilities and new stuff, and you can enhance you're finding gear when you're down there. You're finding a Darkstone blunt, big lightning cannon or something like that that you can use. Or in Tradera, it's a steampunk type world where these mutated guys are running around with machine guns, well, old like World War I type, World War II steampunkish tanks and things like that. It's very cool. Swamps of Death, you're fighting lizard people and weird snake things and blah blah blah. And the City of the Ancients takes place in this frozen city in another world, and there's like weird technology there that can really mess with you. Now imagine these cowboys are wandering into these other worlds. These Indian scouts are wandering in these other worlds and encountering the weirdest, craziest things. And then back on the Earth, there's you collect all this Darkstone. You think you're doing good. You go back and the Darkstone mutates you and messes you up, or it gives you special abilities with the mutations. So you level up, you get mutations from that, you go back to the town, you have adventures, you buy stuff, you do so many different things in the game. It is my #1 cooperative soloable game. Very easy to play solo, very easy. A lot to it, but easy to play. This is a game, even though it can be super long, I have yet to sit down with a group of people who didn't have fun with it. The one thing I'll tell you, because I like painting miniatures, I've found that I've rekindled my desire, my enjoyment in putting together miniatures like the ones when I did them for Kingdom Death Monster and for Shadows of Brimstone. But I'll caution you with both those games. My #1 and my #2 games have something in common that, weirdly enough, I don't like to do all the time, and that's assemble miniatures. Okay, so I'm going to tell you, even if you sit down with just the 2 base games for Shadows of Brimstone, City of Ancients, Swamps of Death, you're going to be putting together a veritable ton of miniatures. And hopefully painting them. I have painted a lot of mine. I haven't painted this one yet, and I haven't painted Caverns of Cinder yet, and I haven't painted a lot of the Kickstarter stuff that I've gotten yet, like the bandits. And there's the Scafford gang. It's a mutated bandit gang, and there's all kinds of different bandit types in there. It's just a fun game. Shootouts in saloons and shootouts in the mines, and very tactical. You can block things to make sure that things can't get by you, and all the characters have really cool special abilities. The saloon girl's really tough, by the way. I think she's OP a little bit. Again, you get gear and stuff that enhances your character. It doesn't have a good save game type mechanic like Kingdom Death does, and because you don't have a lot of duplicates of cards, you might have to really write down everything and go back and sort it out again when you go back to play, which could be create a scenario where you have a long time in setup. But outside of that, Kingdom Death Monster and Shadows of Brimstone have a lot of similarities in the sense that they're tactical, role-playing board games with this civilization element in between. Now, in Shadows of Brimstone, you're not going out and building the town. You're just visiting the town and doing role-playing type things like in D&D, where you go back to town to train, level up, whatever. Now, in Shadows of Brimstone, you can level up on the spot. Once you hit enough experience points, you can be in the middle of the mines dungeon. It's a dungeon crawl. And level up, and what's cool about that is you can use that to your advantage. Like, you can know that you're really close to death. Man, if I take 2 more hits, I'm dead. If I can probably suffer 1 more hit. I'll fight it out 1 more time, then bam, level up and get full health and everything back again, plus new abilities. It's very cool. Plus, there's lots of random events. When you travel in town, there's a random event chart, blah blah blah. They could expand that tremendously. I think they did in the Frontier Town. They expanded on that, and I think they could continue to do that. And there's a big giant campaign of this was put out on Board Game Geek that turns it into a campaign where really in the game you're going, the scenario is kind of linked but not really, and you could go from scenario to scenario, and it wouldn't matter. You don't have to do them in any order. There's no like overarching story for your character. That to me is the next evolution of the game, is to create a not real version, because the one that was done online is pretty good. Official version that has a big campaign. It would be cool if they just came out with the Shadows of Brimstone campaign book. That's all they would need to do. They don't need any more miniatures. I mean, good lord. By the time I get my version 2, so I have a big giant case of painted miniatures. I still have miniatures in this. I didn't take the miniatures out of this box yet. So I got to finish building them and put them back in the box. I have all the other ones built, with the exception of a couple of the resin heroes that I'm really struggling with because I can't keep the components together when I glue them. That's me. That's not the miniatures. But by all means, and I found an enjoyment in assembling again, so that's real important. Anyway, I've gone through my top 10, guys, and I don't want this video is getting long, so I'm going to break there and tell you thank you, Give me your comments. Give me your feedback. I want to know what you think of my top 10. And I know some of you, Cat Weasel, Paul, you picked a bunch of them that were in my top 10. You were pretty darn close on a lot of them. And let me know what you think. Let me know if you agree. Let me know if Shadows of Brimstone is your favorite game. Let me know if Kingdom Death Monster's on your radar, or if you've played it. There's lots of playthroughs there. If you, I mean, guys, I'm going to tell you, playing the Kingdom Death Monster playthrough on my channel was so much fun, and I could tell that the people were watching it and were enjoying it a lot too. It was a lot of fun. So go back and watch that if you haven't. It's one of my favorite series. And then go back, if you want a real good experience too, go back and watch my last Big Touch of Evil series, because it was fun. That was really good. And also my different Shadows of Brimstone ones. Now, Shadows of Brimstone's fiddly, and you tend to make some mistakes. And I know I have some great viewers that are awesome rules lawyers, and they catch my mistakes. But I'm going to tell you, with storytelling games like Shadows of Brimstone, even Kingdom Death Monster to a degree, you want to try and be more accurate with that game. And A Touch of Evil, if I make a few mistakes, I'm not too freaked out about it, because as long as I'm being consistent with it, it's fine. Anyway, because they're meant to tell a story and have fun more than anything else. Shadows of Brimstone, my number one, and probably will be my number one. I can't wait to get the rest of my Kickstarter from that. It's okay. Big drawback: years in coming. That's what I'm gonna say. Now, I also backed the next version of that, which is a Japanese themed one called Forbidden Fortress, which is the Japanese version of Shadows of Brimstone, and you can combine the two. But Forbidden Fortress is another one, man. I kept thinking no one's done a really good Asian, like Japanese, Chinese mythology dungeon crawl, and then here comes Shadows of Brimstone, Forbidden Fortress, where you're fighting Oni and other things. But again, it's the same thing. The Darkstones come to the world and created this scenario that caused lots of problems. So I kickstarted the heck out of that too, to the maximum level I could. Bad for me, but it is what it is. And it's going to be able to combine with Shadows of Brimstone, which is probably going to keep this in my top 5 forever. Be my guess. Anyway, guys, again, long video. Thanks for watching. Thanks for subscribing. Thanks for sticking with me in my top 50. Please let me know what you think. Let me know how I can expand the channel. I got some great feedback on this set of videos, and I agree with some of the feedback I've gotten. However, some of it comes down to timing, the amount of time I have to edit. Like, it's 10 o'clock at night right now, and I've been working on this video for a few hours, and I haven't even edited it yet. Or at least an hour and a half, 2 hours. And we're going to get busy and do some more playthroughs. Again, I'm sorry for my Black Orchestra playthrough. It wasn't intentional. I was actually really enjoying it. But I literally, the pawns were sliding. It was so warped. It was just, God, I'm so disappointed in that. And but I'm going to do it on Tabletopia, and I'm going to record that and broadcast it so that you can see a full playthrough of that game. And then hopefully I can press this board to make it right again, because it is currently unplayable. And that is a real shame, because it is a phenomenal game. Darn it, Game Salute, you keep nailing me. But that being said, let's move on from that. I don't like to badmouth people, but that's just poor quality. Yeah. Anyway, guys, thanks again for watching. Thanks for subscribing. I appreciate it. Pardon for being a little tired this fine day. I've had a very busy couple of weeks at work. It's been very challenging and interesting, and I like coming back and dealing with my hobby fun and dealing with you guys in that hobby. I don't think I'm going to do Gloomhaven as a playthrough, but I have an idea. I think, because I want to play that with my friends. I want to play with the group's people, not just by myself on the channel. So I'm thinking, let me know what you think about this. I'm thinking about playing it with people and then coming back and doing like a video recap where I kind of tell the story of it and take a lot of pictures and some video, but not actually play the whole game session. It's not dice driven, and it's got great mechanics, but I think, and again, it's got a legacy system. I could be playing this for years, so I'll probably do it in like seasons, and then I got to get, because I do got to get back to my Kingdom Death season 2, but I want to do some other playthroughs in between. I still have to get Zimby Mojo to the dang table. What's kept me from that is I haven't been able to get. I want to play it a few times with people, and I haven't been able to get my group to. It's kind of an oddball, outside the box game, and I haven't been able to get anybody to play it with me yet. When I show up for games, everybody's got their things they want to do. And a lot of it's like some of the most popular ones that are out right now, which are, some of them are, you know, back in here, that are the new shiny. So it's been tough. But anyway, we'll get there. Thanks, guys. Take care. I'll see you soon because I'm going to start doing more of these kind of videos. So I will talk to you later and have a wonderful, wonderful rest of your week. Take care.